welcome. Before I get started, please provide me with the correct pronunciation of your
My
name. I'm
name
like, I would not butcher sis's name.
is Mawiyah Kai El Jama Bomani. Mawiyah Bomani. Mhm.
Okay. Bomani. Let's welcome Mawiyah Bomani to the stage, to the virtual stage. I am actually very, 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 very honored to have you here in this space. Not only do I own one of your books, and it is in my little library over here, and I'm honored to have another author present today to dive into herbal medicine. But I'm honored to have this session, this topic talked about, because a lot of people say, well, African Americans, we don't have any culture, we don't have any
Right,
medicine, and they don't
right.
understand that we do have a medicine system that was birthed from, from slavery, that was birthright
Yes.
experiences, and that is hoodoo. And unfortunately, hoodoo and voodoo has such a stigmatized view based because of how people were afraid of our medicine and us using our
Hmm.
medicine to revolt. Unfortunately, they have demonized it and made it seem like
Yes.
such a horrible practice. And we all don't know that, again, we use hoodoo. That was our medicine that we adopted to for survival. And so
Hmm.
I am honored to bring Mawiyah on this stage. So a little tidbit about Mawiyah. Again, she is an educator. She's an eighth generation Igun medium priestess of Oya and their Yoruba system of spirituality. She does have a book entitled Conjuring the Calabash, Empowering Women with Hoodoo Spells and Magic. And today, Mawiyah is going to dive into, where is my actual schedule? Her topic is Hoodoo Liberation Magic, Hoodoo Rituals to Combat Systemic Oppression. You all go ahead and bring Mawiyah on the stage. I'm so
Yeah.
excited for this. We've been asking, people have been like, can you get someone that talks about hoodoo? I'm like, let me get on it. So I'm so excited.
Let me pull up my slides. Okay, I think I got it here. Okay.
Yes, people are asking, is voodoo different from hoodoo or voodoo? And I'm pretty sure she's probably going to go into that. So y'all have
Yeah.
your ears and ready to listen.
Thank you so much. Can you see my slides? Perfect. All right. So the Soul Remembers Hoodoo Liberation Magic is the title. One of the things that I always do before I even, when I'm working with working with clients, working with my children, I always try to use what's there, what's always there, and that's the soil in my backyard. I use Florida water. I use the water from my tap if I have it. Whatever I have, I try to use that to sort of connect with the energy of the elements that are already there within that space. And so I use that in a way of calling on my ancestors, but also calling on the energy that was there before my ancestors were ever even in that space. And so with that, I use the soil sometimes in my prayers and my rituals. Then I'll take some of that soil, put it inside of a little satchel, a little bag, and I'll carry that soil with me as my protection. I may put it under the mats in the car, or even if you, even at the job, if there's a, area, the door seal to protect myself, give myself that energy. And all of that, I gathered all of that energy, that information from growing up in a home that practiced a lot of hoodoo. There was a lot of voodoo, there was Santeria, but hoodoo was that sort of that bridge that brought all of those practices together. And so this is my book. It's Conjuring the Calabash, Empowering Women with Hoodoo Spells and Magic. I'm very proud of it because I feel like for me, during the pandemic, I was talking to a lot of clients and people were really trying to figure out how they could utilize magic, and they didn't have the space to be initiated into certain systems. And so hoodoo was that element that we could all use. It was our first magic. And so the book itself, it allows you to delve into ritual workings and things like that. And you don't have to be someone who is initiated into a system. So I really like that because it can pull from all of our different backgrounds, and we can still, if you still want to, if you still attend the church, you can still attend the church, you can still, attend whatever worship space you're in, but you can still practice these rituals in hoodoo. Okay. So when we talk about hoodoo, one of the things that always comes up is what is hoodoo and where did that title, that word, that name come from? Well, traditionally, we were talking about rock formations, how they were formed sort of looking like sculptures. And so that was given the name hoodoo. But then as we started to utilize it, it became a practice of sympathetic magic African Americans would use, but it would be housed within the energies and the workings of Native magic, the First Nation people who were here, utilizing some of their herbs and the resources that they had, as well as with the European sort of blending, because you're in a different space. So within that different space, you call upon the spirit of those herbs and that energy within that traditional space. A lot of times what gives it that demonizing, that bad taste in people's mouths is people sort of, think about it as being something that brings bad luck. You're always doing it to take over somebody's energies or to have somebody do something, do your bidding. And that is not what it is. We find that oftentimes with any type of indigenous practice, it's a way to move us away from our source and into somebody else's belief and somebody else's practice where our spiritual gods and goddesses don't look like us. And so we become prisoner, mentally to someone else's belief system. When we talk about it, I get white people who will come in and they will say things about, well, why can't I practice it? That's usually the first question or the first thing that comes up. They'll have me on, they'll want me to talk about hoodoo, and then they'll say, well, is it closed? And so what I always tell people is that I look at it as this. The way I was taught, it came from our subjugation, our enslavement, and our need to be able to take care of ourselves in a place that was foreign to us, where we didn't have doctors, where we didn't have a legal system that's looking out for us. We didn't have all of these things, all of these elements. But what we did have was a working knowledge of a place we were before. And that working knowledge blended in with other individuals who had a working knowledge of the places they were, and combining all of those interests and ideas together to form a protection magic. So I tell people, you think about the time of our enslavement and us needing to be protected. And then you would look at that and you would say to yourself, is that something that I would want to be a part of? It's kind of like, again, when I tell white people, it's kind of like you're trying to colonize a practice, because now you're trying to force yourself into this space that was created for people who were dealing with issues in their lives where they had no one else to look out for them to do that. And so I say to people that there are overlappings with when we think about Western magic, or we think about Western practices, whether it's Wicca or whatever. There's some things where they would do working with playing cards. Well, in hoodoo, we do work with playing cards too. It's forms of divination. But when I talk about images like Lama Dama, she represents an enslaved person who was working, in the big house, who was the go-between between the Maroons as well as the field slaves, the field enslaved people. And so that type of energy would not want to be working with a white person, with their ideas and their needs. And so I always use Lama Dama as a protective energy, when I'm thinking about my children, whether they're here in the home or they're away at school or they're away visiting or away in another country. She brings that energy of protection for the family, because that's what she represents. This whole idea of a woman who has lived out the majority of her life birthing babies who were taken away from her. Now she wants to protect the family of those BIPOC people. And so I use that sort of like as an example, right, when I'm talking to white groups. And I say that energy would not want to work with you, because she is still in that space where she sees you as this person who has taken away these children. So, there are other forms of magic for them. Who do, the way I was taught, is a BIPOC form of magic. It is our form of healing and our form, even today, of getting through, some of the systemic racist things that we're still encountering. And in the middle, I have a picture of Mother Catherine Seals, New Orleans representative of hoodoo. I'm from New Orleans, born and raised in New Orleans. And just the fact that when we think about an individual like Mother Catherine Seals, who worked with other people. She worked with white people. She worked with Black people. She worked with Native First Nation people. But in her earliest beginnings, when she was dealing with her own issues with men being beaten and abused and losing children, she went to a faith healer who was white, who told her that he would not see people who were Black. He didn't do that. And so her own idea was, I'm going to go home and I'm going to pray to God. And if God opens a way for me to be able to heal myself, then I will work towards helping to heal others, no matter who they are. So even within that, working with her, she was one who saw that as an avenue where she could work with everyone. And so I would tell them, if you want to write letters to people of color in that arena, like Mother Catherine Seals, acknowledging your understanding of what African American people, BIPOC people have gone through, then that is something that you can do in that regard. But a lot of the hoodoo workings that I do and that I usually talk about are specifically geared towards people of color. And so again, when we talk about appropriation, people trying to appropriate, I always want them to understand the significance of what they're doing. This is not dress up. This is not like a Halloween get up. This is an actual practice that people are still relying on, especially in these times, for our survival. And so I usually would throw out these questions when I'm dealing with mixed groups of people and wanting them to really understand if this is an experience that they would like to share with other people, right? The knowledge base of it, but not so much trying to fit into it or force themselves into it. So some notes on hoodoo, some things that sort of overlap, but not always. In hoodoo, we do have a witness. We have a tag lock. This is an item that is used, that is infused with the person's essence, and it could be hair, it could be urine, it could be semen, it could be a host of things, right? That individual would use to leave at a space or to have it in a certain avenue or venue that you're gaining power from it, with it using it. So it tells what is done, the hex, the spell. We're trying to figure out what has happened. And oftentimes in hoodoo, when a person goes to a conjure practitioner or to a root worker and they feel that someone has done something to them, they want to know what has happened. Is it a curse? Is it a hex? What is it? Is it a crossing? Is there something that I've done that I didn't know that I was capable of doing? It could have been a mistake. So they figure out what's going on and they look for methods in which to reverse those things. Growing up, particularly for myself growing up, it was always important when you went to the beautician, you got your hair done, and any hair, like if they were straightening out the hair or whatever they were doing, any hair that was collected on the floor, it was important that that hair was picked up, put into an ashtray, and that it was burned. The idea behind it was that, if it was just tossed in the trash or however, a way that was not the burning, that crows could get it. And it could drive you insane, or that someone else could pick it up who wanted to do some harm against you, could have that. So there was always that understanding that it had to be disposed of in a way in which it was ritually burned, right? And still today, I do that even with my kids. They know even if they're going to the beautician or to the barbershop to bring a Ziploc bag to collect that hair to bring it back so that it can be, ritually disposed of. Another important thing that happens and that we continue to do today. We're not so much where I'm living now. I live in Shreveport, which is the northern part of Louisiana, and there are not so many shotgun houses. There are a few, but in New Orleans, where there are many, never letting someone come in the front door and leave out the back because they could be dropping something off in a manner of a curse or a hex or whatever, and then leaving out the back door so that they don't cross over their own workings. And that has happened. I grew up with stories of that happening, and just it was a reminder that if you had a house party or anything like that, you wanted to make sure that, combs and brushes and anything that people could pick up and try to use against you was put away, and that everyone, came in this front door and left out the front door, those kind of things, for our own protection. So when we talk about hoodoo and how it was created and why it was created, we think about Africans from many different regions, right? Bringing their cultural beliefs, their spiritual beliefs, and not really having one set belief system in this quote unquote new world. And so with that, and not having the herbs and the things that they used in their world, in abundance in this new world. So now you have to blend, you start to mix. You start to mix regional African belief systems with what is there, with the native belief systems, with this understanding of this European way of life, right? And from all of those mixtures, we have what comes out to be hoodoo, right? And so a lot of hoodoo workings and a lot of hoodoo belief systems, you will find they do overlap in other areas, right? You see different things that are used in hoodoo that may be used in, traditional Akan spiritual belief systems or in Yoruba belief systems. But it's all pulled into what became a new practice, which is the practice of hoodoo. When people ask me who is inherently hoodoo, I always go into the indigenous people of color, the people who have been subjugated, the people who have had their lives uprooted, their culture, their legacy, their history uprooted by colonization, right? Those are the descendants of these enslaved people. These are the people who are inherently hoodoo. So even if someone says, well, I can't really connect to where in my family hoodoo fits in, right? Because mom, grandma, nobody really knows. But then you don't really just go to them and mention hoodoo. You may mention some folk things that we did. What are some things that we did centered around it could be a thunderstorm, right? Or someone who passes in the home where, an elder may say, well, we cover the mirrors, right? And so that is something that is inherently part of Hoodoo tradition, especially in New Orleans, covering those mirrors, making sure that the spirit does not get trapped in the mirror. So, you definitely do that if someone is very ill, terminally ill in the home, and you don't know at what point in time that that person may transition. So it's not so much as asking, what is our relationship to hoodoo, because a lot of times people are afraid to even connect that word to a practice that they may do. So it may just be, what are some things that we did that were kind of, folk magicy, or what are some things that grandma did that were different that, that people don't really talk about. And then you'll find that you start to understand the deeper connection that your family has to it. But it is very much inherently hoodoo. And I think that the more we start to talk about it, we start to destigmatize it, the wording of it, so that it doesn't appear to be something that seems as though it's more rooted in devil worship. We want to take that away from it. But asking about some of those things that your family has done, some of those ritual type things that they do, and why you do those things, you start to find out that you have your own, association with hoodoo. Thinking about hoodoo and thinking about the many different places where Africans were dropped off and picked up during this whole travel of enslavement, we can actually see from this map, just how ingrained a lot of the rituals are, right? How a lot of the workings sort of took on a new shape, right? Even if the language suffered a bit, even if it wasn't a sense of a connection to the language of Africa, right? The practices, they still made their way everywhere. And so they become part of this gumbo, I like to say, of what we do today, right? So when I think about how hoodoo has affected the lives or affected the lives of enslaved women, I think about how enslaved women were forced to reproduce constantly. And so I think about the lies that were told, if you, from the age of 12 or 13, if you were to have 15 children, 15 live births, right? Then, the plantation owner would say that, you would earn your freedom, but they had to be 15 live births in order to earn your freedom. And so you think about women who were trying to just to get by, trying to make sure that that they would live long enough to be able to see their freedom. And in most cases, not be able to not live long enough. They would not live long enough to see those children or see a majority of those children, grow into, something, because they would be sold, right, at a certain point in their lives. But also a lot of the record keeping behind that was a lie. There was no desire to free these women, especially after the trafficking of enslaved people ended from Africa. Then there needed to be a way to create more enslaved individuals on the plantation, which resulted in a lot of rape or forced coupling between Africans, or even the rape from the white planters. So all of this soaks into the soil, right? All of this energy is within the soil. And so what I do from time to time is I will take my shoes off, go out in the yard, and actually stand in the soil. And when you stand in the soil, with your feet just touching the earth, you do start to pull into yourself, into your spirit, a lot of the energy that was there before you, right? And so that soil is infused with not just the soil of the enslaved Africans, but the First Nation people. It is also infused with all of the battles that were fought to keep people enslaved, that were fought to keep the land. All of it becomes a story, right? And so you can use that soil, always use that soil as medicine. And I encourage people, if it's not a place where that is protected, collect soil. Yeah, make it a habit of collecting soil, because there are stories that will come from that soil. Even if you take that soil and you sit it on your altar space, or in a space with a white candle, you start to understand and start to develop a deeper connection with that soil, because that soil will begin to tell you the story, the stories that have traveled over it. And those stories will come in dreams. They may come in, just chance conversations with individuals who probably have been there before you have, right? They'll start to talk to you about the place where you live, the place where you work, and you start to find that there is a connection between that. And I think we don't honor the soil enough. We do work with the soil, but oftentimes we just we take, and we don't really thank the soil in that way, in a way of remembering. And so, just like I did for Black women, I also understand the soil, what it harbors for Black men, and a lot of the things that Black men, enslaved African men, had to endure, the rape as well, castration, buck breaking, breeding farms, sexual entertainment, all of these things that women and men, enslaved people, had to endure. All of that bleeds into the soil, right? And so when we think about magic, we don't always have to find ourselves in expensive botanicas or places like that, or shops, new age shops. A lot of what we can use is just what's there. We can use that soil as part of our magical workings to protect us. We can use that soil as part of our magical workings to help heal the land that we're on. I'm being cognizant of my time. This is a really long, this is a long set of slides. And so I will, if anyone is interested in it, I would definitely make sure you get it. A few slides I'm going to slip pass by, because I want to make sure that I stay, abreast with the time. So anyway, one of the major forms of working with hoodoo is always the John the Conqueror route, right? And if you know the story of Frederick Douglass, you definitely know that he met Sandy Jenkins, and what is believed is, during his attempt to run away, right, from Covey, and his dealings with him, was meeting Sandy Jenkins in the woods, who gave him the John the Conqueror route. Frederick Douglass says that he understood that Sandy Jenkins had a religion that had no name, right? And so we hoodoo practitioners like to call it hoodoo. And so he told him that this would protect him. This root would protect him if he carried it with him. I wear my John the Conqueror root. I have it on. I have lots of John the Conqueror roots. It's one of the first things that I give to people when they want to redevelop that connection with the land, as well as with their hoodoo beginnings. It's the John the Conqueror, because it is, to me, it is the most important part of hoodoo practice, to have it, to own it, to wear it. because of the story of High John being an African prince is a story. There are many stories, right? And, excuse me, and asking his father if he could travel to the New World because he saw in a dream what the enslaved people were going through in the New World, and it was different from being captured in Africa and with between other groups of Africans, right, where you had the potential to marry into these spaces, right. It was much different. He saw in his dream. He saw the slave trade. He saw the horrors of it all. He saw the ships. He saw the plantations. And so he wanted to come to the New World to teach the enslaved people, how to use magic, right? Because he was a great magician, magic person. And so his father allowed him to travel. And he did start to teach people how to become maroons, right? He went all over and he taught them how to live in the swamps, how to take from the swamp and use what they needed to use to protect themselves. And as the story goes, the devil came and saw that High John was doing these things. And so prior to High John, you know, coming into the fields, many enslaved people would pray to die, right? They would pray for their death. They didn't like it, what they were doing, the work they were doing. They just would pray to just take me. And so the devil loved that because he would have those souls. Well, when High John was able to travel to the New World, he encouraged them to fight, right? And in fighting, they stopped praying to die, right? They understood that they could have their freedom, right? Even if it was in the swamps, they could be free. They could be men and women and they could fight for other and free others. And so the devil said, he said, I like what this guy is doing. I can have him work for me. But instead of freeing, enslaved people, he can trick them into, work coming to where I am, coming to hell. And so he tried to reason with High John. It didn't work. He decided to use his daughter, Lilith, who was beautiful and she could dance. And it was said that she had lured many men and women to hell for her father. But when she saw High John, she immediately recognized that the energy within him was a pure energy. He was not doing this for self-aggrandizement. He was really wanting to free the people because he believed in his heart it was what needed to happen. So she fell in love with him. And so they devised a plan where High John would tell his story to the roots, right? That became his root. And in the telling of the story to the root, any person of color who picked it up, they would understand the story of freedom and they would understand how to gain their freedom and how to use that freedom to help others become free. Their time was short, High John and Lilith, and they knew that they had to hurry up and do this. He had to do this as many places as he could because the devil was hot on their trail. He was thinking something was up. So Lilith went back to her father and said, well, the next day, High John is going to be ready to do what you say. He's going to be ready to listen to the plan that you have laid out for him. So the next day comes, the Lilith and High John are gone. They're long gone. They've gone back to Africa. The devil doesn't even know where they are. The devil is sitting, he's waiting, and he's seeing nobody is begging to die, right? He's wandering around and he's seeing that these people, these enslaved people, they look like, they're standing upright, like they have it all made, they have it all figured out. And so by the time he understands that High John has tricked him, he is so angry and he decides that if he ever sees them again, that he's going to tear both their souls apart. But what we understand from that story is that High John, the Conqueror root, is the root of protection. It is the basis of hoodoo workings. And it is also our connection to not just what we understand in this world, but our connection to Africa. So soil retrieval is the biggest thing that I really wanted to get to in these slides. And so that is just about, like I said earlier, the soil remembers everything that happens. And so in part of our working with the soil, we want to thank the soil. And then after we thank the soil, then the soil will be of use to us in however manner we see fit for ourselves. So I always start off with the feeding of the earth before I collect soil. To me, that is very important because the feeding of the earth allows the soil to feel as though I am coming in peace. And so these are the items that I use. I always recite a prayer or praise words, excuse me, and that could be whatever you so choose. You could write something out that night before, whatever you feel on your heart. I always tell people, go with that. You don't have to have something definitive from a Bible or from any type of holy book that you want to use. If you so choose, then that is fine too. And then you find a spot. Make sure you check that there are no power lines or anything like that. You don't want to start digging in the area and have some problems, right? So always check that first. And then I start to assemble all of my things that I'm going to use. They're going to drop into the hole. This is part of the feeding, right? For me, it's corn, it's greens, sardines, peppers. You definitely want to have some type of libation, whether that's rum, whiskey, water, whatever that is. This was part of my last feeding, and these were some of the items that I used for that. And so, yeah, I do the feeding because anytime I want to collect the soil, I want to make sure that I'm giving to the soil, right? And so I always have these tools in my car because if I had somewhere and I want to collect some soil, it could be by a bank, it could be by a school, it could be near a hospital. I want to be able to label the soil that I'm using. And I always bring some of my Florida water or something like that, or some blessed water, and I'll spray in that spot if I'm taking soil from a spot that is away from my home. And so that is my feeding. I'll bring just some regular water in a bottle that I've prayed over. And then I'll bring that and I'll spritz that area. And, it doesn't have to be the area where I'm taking the soil because we know that it travels, right? So I'll just spritz that area, take some soil. And that is my way of saying thank you. Well, no, I'll go over this one. Some of the things that I do talk to people about, because oftentimes people want to know, how can I divine if I have the soil? Or if I want to go up to a place and I want to divine beforehand on whether or not I can use that soil, what are some ways to do that? Because I know that there are divinatory practices that are specific to certain spiritual systems. What can I do? So the one of the ways that I always tell people to do, if you're not a part of affiliated with a specific system, is definitely you can do the coin, the penny divination. And so this is how I do it. And so I would use the pennies in my hand, and I spell it out for you there. But if no heads up, right? That's a no. Don't use that soil. If it's two heads up, that's a yes. Three heads up, that's a yes, but leave something sweet. And it always tells you what to leave. You can leave something sweet there it could be a piece of candy or whatever, unwrap it, of course. Four heads, yes, but leave a bit of both, a liquid or something sweet. And the liquid could be water. You don't have to be, rum or whiskey. It could be water. And these are some of the places where I collect soil, right? If I'm creating a gratitude jar, I like to do that with my soil as well. And these are the items that I would use for my gratitude jar. Naturally, I have lots of mason jars. You could just have a jar that you keep. It could be an old, spaghetti jar that you cleaned out. You don't have to go out and buy mason jars. I always tell people that you can use with baby food jars if you have those. And so I like to put the soil into the jar. I would put a root into the jar, use some of that oil. I like to use olive oil, Hoyt's cologne. I like to use that in there. And then I'll write a statement, a letter of gratitude and thanks for what this soil means to me, or what I'm going to use this soil for. And I'll take that with me if I'm traveling. I'll bring my gratitude jar with me. If I'm staying at a hotel in another area, I'll bring that jar. I may take some soil from around the hotel. I'll ask, if I can possibly use some soil from that area and add that to my gratitude jar. I like to add soil from different places because it gives me a chance to be thankful for all of the places and all of the people who've traveled in those places before me. And so I list the instructions for creating the gratitude jar. One of the things that I also encourage people to do is to learn the First Nation people who were in that space where they live, where you work, even if you're traveling somewhere. And I have a map on here that details, those different groupings of people where they lived, in reference to where we are today. And so I always like to call out those names as well when I'm working with my ancestor work. I'll call out the Caddo because we live in the northern part of Louisiana now, but I'll always call out the Caddo Nation, in reference to that. So those are things that are important to me in the knowing, and it helps to bless the soil. It helps to develop your connection with nature, as well as your connection with your ancestors and the individuals who oftentimes aided your ancestors in their own survival. All right. I use Adinkra symbols also in my work with soil. And so in New Orleans, there are lots of Adinkra symbols that are within the iron grate of the city, right? When you look at the ironwork, you see lots of symbols. You see Sankofa symbols, in terms of remembering our past and things like that. So I use a lot of those in my own work. And so for me, I will take different symbols. You can print it out, you can draw it yourself, and what the symbol represents, I will allow that to be used in my jar, in my soil. I'll put it into my soil, and I will use that for, if it's protection, if it's to help, I've used some when I had my daughter was in college and she was working on study, and she needed to, just to really focus in, hone in, sharing a room with somebody else who might not be, that much of a voracious reader or voracious studier. So they start to feel as though with this soil jar, with this Adinkra symbol inside, that they can sort of focus more, right? And so for many different ways, I use soil blended with the symbolism of the city, right, where I'm from, which has a lot of symbolism. And so those symbols blended with the soil are twofold, and it empowers your magic even more. Like I said, for different reasons, you might decide to use the symbols, and you don't have to draw them. You can print them off, put them on a piece of paper, and stick it into your soil. And this one for protection magic, right? If you want to work on how to protect your family, if you're going on a road trip, I've done it lots of times, and I've placed it into into a jar, small baby food jar of soil, and placed it in the glove compartment, and that's protection, especially with us traveling and dealing with police, right? And so this has been one that I use often for my protection. Same thing. I'm just showing different ways of how we use it. I use this one often with when we're talking about racism and oppression. This is one that I would use, for that as well. Protect us, to make us understand where we are, who we are, and so that we don't feel so beat down by racism. Putting it into our soil jar. Still part of hoodoo magic, but it's very inconspicuous. It doesn't take a lot of time. You can prepare your soil jars ahead of time, and then just label them, and so when you need to use them, they're already ready for you. Trouble saving money. This is a good one to use in your soil jar. So I'm just going to go through a few. To calm your nervous energy. If you're, you getting ready to take an important test, or you're nervous about a flight, anything like that, this is a good one to have as well. Justice and legal matters. This is a really, really good one that a friend of mine used recently in her soil jar. As she was going to court, she was dealing with a divorce, and so she was going, and she needed to have something besides her lawyer, who she felt like really wasn't really working in her best interest, and so she carried this one in her purse, in her soil jar, and she came out with the win. All right, I'm going to stop it there.
It was getting so good.
Well, I want to stop. That's why I'm going to stop it there for questions. I don't want to
It
go over.
It is time. We do have a few more minutes. I'll let you all to ask. We have 3 more minutes. We won't have time for questions. Either she can finish up her slides, or she can answer 1 or 2 questions. Mawiyah, I would like to ask, this was amazing. Dare I say, this was one
Thank
of
you.
my
Thank you.
favorite sessions in the
I
whole
was
conference.
nervous because I saw everybody's things and I thought, oh my God, I hope I fit. Hope it fits. But yeah.
No, it fitted perfectly. Honestly, I would say your session was one of the few sessions that addressed African American spirituality and religion specifically. So it did fit. It did have a place in this conference because we do
Thank
have
you.
many African Americans here in this conference. So honestly, this rounded out the whole conference, dare I say. We
Thank you.
had
Thank you.
different medicine cultures, but a lot of times as African Americans, we feel left out. We feel like, what is our culture? What are
Yes.
our
Yes.
practices? And
Yes.
I was sitting here just eating. I was literally like this the whole time. It was so amazing. We do have to wrap it up. We do have a session coming up at 3, but I would
Yeah.
love to
Yeah.
invite you. Do you have time around 5 or 5:30 to hop on our VIP session for questions?
Well,
Um,
yeah.
Gratitude, much gratitude. So those of you all who have questions for Mawiyah, please join the VIP afterwards. She'll be in there, and if you are short on time, we can have you go first. We can ask your questions first. I did send that link in the email earlier today, so you could just click that link to join. This was amazing. This was
Thank you so much. Thank you all.
mind blown by how amazing it was. I would love to have you on the BIPOC herbalism community platform to teach another class.
Oh,
We
that would
do
be wonderful.
thank you for, we're going to be hitting you up. We do offer paid offerings on the community platform. Yes, a book club. I think we might dive into, I have your book somewhere and I don't know where it is. And I wanted to show your book. My partner came out here looking for the book and we couldn't find it. But yes, y'all go ahead. Do we have a direct link for her book? Where do you like for us to purchase your book? Is it directly on your website or Amazon?
You could go to Llewellyn. Go to Llewellyn.com. Yeah,
Okay, can someone find, we have the Amazon link to your book,
that's
but
perfect too.
okay. Everybody right now, stop what you're doing. Click on that Amazon. Well, Amazon take about 40%. So should we go to Llewellyn to get the book?
Let's go to Llewellyn. Let's do that.
Okay, do you have the link? Can someone find the link to the Llewellyn website to her book? So that we can order it directly so she can get more of a commission because Amazon takes a good 40 something percent.
Mhm.
So y'all can get her book right now. Her book is amazing. Is amazing. If we can find the book, Conjuring the Calabash admin team on llewellyn.com. We're gonna work in the system in the background to find that. Again, I don't want it to end, but we do have a session coming up right
Yes.
now. So y'all, first, before we even show her some love for her favorite colors, how did you all resonate with this? How did y'all like this session? Because I was mind blown. I was sitting in the back like, yes, yes. People says, Brandy says, this is amazing. Yes, it was
Oh,
wonderful.
thank you. Thank you.
Eat it up. You see all that love. They said represent.
Yeah, yeah, that's so sweet. Mwah, mwah.
Now, we always like to show our speakers love in this chat. So could you please let us know what your favorite color is so we can show and pour our gratitude into you more?
Purple, purple.
Y'all already know what to do. Y'all go ahead and show love to Mawiyah. This literally, like I said, one of my favorite sessions of the whole
Thank
entire
you.
conference. I resonated with it. Mawiyah, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much for asking me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I was
I've
so honored to ask me.
I've been following your work for a while, and we've had requests for hoodoo practitioners, and I'm just like, I know who because I had your book as well. So I'm just honored that you even had time to come here. I feel like you have more to share, more to say, and I want to have you back. So thank you again. All those purple hearts are for you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. We're dropping her links again. You all go follow her on socials. You all grab her book. Awesome. So the admin actually found, admin is great. Admin found her Llewellyn link for her book.
There you go.
Go ahead and click that link directly and purchase her book. It is amazing if you want to learn more. If you're African American, everyone should be purchasing that
Yes,
book. So learn more
yes,
about
yes, yes,
our medicine that was
yes.
demonized. We use it for survival, our medicine.
Mhm.
So thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Feels,
All right.
thank you. We'll see you later.
Bye-bye.
Gratitude, Ashe. Yo, was that not? Come on. Come on. Was that not amazing? I literally the whole time was just like, yes, tell me more. Oh my gosh. Oh, really? I'm like, okay, we're going outside today. We're gonna grab some pennies and we're gonna offer new offerings to the soil. As a farmer, I really did appreciate the part on the soil and giving back to the soil, and giving offerings to the soil. And I always look for just different things to be able to incorporate into my farming practices that are indigenous. And so being able to give offerings to the soil in an indigenous way was just honestly amazing. I'm a forever student. So we're gonna go ahead and transition. Man, that honestly was the first segment I actually got a chance to actually sit down and pay attention to. So that's probably why I'm just like mind blown, because everything else I've been in the background just working and answering emails